set the tone with vivid present tense imagery and an immediate hook that demands attention. So before we unravel this intense story, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Invite viewers to share their thoughts in the comments, and if they've ever experienced something similar, don't hold back, spill the tea. Now get comfortable, maybe grab a warm drink, and let's dive deep into tonight's roller coaster of emotions. I still remember the cold, sterile light of our living room, the day my parents shattered my trust for the first time. My father's shadow loomed over me, a mountain of unyielding expectations and bitter disapproval. I was just 15, my voice barely starting to find its edge, but even then I knew I didn't want the life they had planned for me, a life of endless textbooks, sleepless nights, and the hollow prestige of a medical degree I never asked for. "You'll be a doctor," my father had declared, his voice a granite slab smashing into the fragile bones of my young dreams. "You have no choice. It's what this family needs." The first time he hit me, it wasn't out of rage, but pure calculated control. His palm connected with my cheek, sharp and precise, the crack echoing off the beige walls like a gunshot. My mother stood there, her arms crossed, eyes colder than winter stone. She didn't flinch. If anything, her lips tightened into a grim line, silently affirming his choice. They had crafted a life around the idea of their son as a respected doctor, a badge of honor in our tight-knit, judgmental community. My dreams were irrelevant, a noisy distraction to be crushed beneath the weight of their ambitions. I wasn't their son in those moments. I was their project, a vessel for their unfulfilled aspirations. Every report card became a battlefield. A slight dip in my grades and the house would become a war zone. My father's lectures were bullets, my mother's glares the cold blade that twisted in my gut. I remember the time I scored an 85 in chemistry. My father's fist slammed into the table so hard the glass salt shaker tipped over, spilling tiny white crystals like shattered promises. "Are you trying to embarrass us?" He'd sneer, his breath hot and sour against my face, his fingers gripping my shirt so tightly I felt the fabric strain against my chest. "You'll study harder, you'll do better, or you'll regret it." I used to think my mother would eventually defend me, that she'd be the soft touch to his iron grip, but she proved me wrong time and again. She reinforced his tyranny, her words sharp as glass. "Stop being weak. Your father only wants what's best for you." I tried for years to live up to their impossible standards. I studied until my eyes burned, my head throbbing from the strain, my heart sinking deeper into a pit of silent rebellion. I wanted to scream, to tell them that their vision for my life felt like a coffin I was being nailed into, one exam at a time. But every time I opened my mouth to protest, the fear of their reaction choked me. I still remember the night I whispered just once that I didn't want to be a doctor. It was after midnight, the house shrouded in shadow, the faint hum of the refrigerator the only witness. My father's reaction was immediate, a swift, backhanded slap that snapped my head to the side, my cheek stinging, my vision swimming with tears I refused to let fall. His voice cut through the darkness, each word a hammer strike. "You don't get to decide. You're too young to know what's good for you." My mother's silence in that moment felt colder than any winter night. She just turned away, her slippers scuffing softly against the tiled floor as she retreated to the comfort of her bedroom, leaving me to stew in my humiliation. That night, something inside me hardened. I couldn't name it then, but looking back, I realized it was the first flicker of defiance, a tiny, stubborn flame that would one day grow into an inferno, powerful enough to incinerate the chains they had wrapped around my life. I stopped seeking their approval. I stopped caring about the venomous barbs they hurled at me over dinner, the bruises that blossomed on my arms like dark, shameful flowers. I started dreaming again in secret, in the quiet, stolen moments between their commands and my own whispered hopes. They thought they could beat me into submission. They had no idea they were forging something stronger, something that would one day rise above their control, beyond their reach. Breaking free from their oppressive grip felt impossible at first. I was shackled not just by their expectations, but by the fear they had driven deep into my bones. Every time my father's shadow crossed the doorway, I would tense my mind, instinctively calculating my escape routes. I felt like a prisoner in my own home, my dreams chained to their ambitions. But slowly, I started to find cracks in their walls. I realized that my only way out was to build a life they couldn't touch, a life where their harsh words and violent hands had no power. I started small. In the corners of my mind, I constructed a world where I was more than just their puppet, a world where I made my own choices, lived on my own terms. The first step was financial freedom. I saved every spare cent I could working odd jobs they would have never approved of. I cleaned tables at a local cafe, managed spreadsheets for a small startup, and even took on midnight shifts at a call center. It was exhausting juggling this secret life alongside their relentless demands for academic excellence. But every dollar I saved felt like a brick in the wall I was building between me and their control. By the time I turned 18, I had a small but meaningful cushion of savings. It wasn't much, but it represented something far more valuable: hope. I took a bold step and applied for scholarships, hiding the acceptance letters in a shoebox beneath my bed, far from their prying eyes. My breakthrough came when I stumbled upon a fledgling health tech startup during a late-night shift. They were desperate for help, drowning in spreadsheets and chaotic project timelines. I offered to organize their data, streamline their finances, and even pitch in on their marketing strategies. In exchange, I asked for equity, a tiny share, but a share nonetheless. It felt like a wild gamble, but I had nothing to lose. Those early months were a blur of sleepless nights, endless coffee runs, and frantic phone calls. I was living a double life: obedient son by day, ambitious entrepreneur by night. I coded until my fingers felt numb, analyzed user feedback, like my life depended on it, and pitched to investors with the quiet desperation of someone with everything to prove. When my parents pressured me to declare a pre-med major, I lied through my teeth, feigning interest in anatomy and organic chemistry, while secretly pouring my energy into the startup. It was exhilarating, dancing on the knife's edge of discovery and deceit. Then one day it happened. Our startup received a critical investment, the kind that could take us from a backroom operation to a legitimate company. My tiny share blossomed into something substantial overnight. I had leverage, now real power. I was no longer just a desperate kid clawing at freedom. I was a shareholder, a partner, a rising force in a field my parents never even considered worthy of attention. I moved out the day after the funds hit our account. I didn't tell them. I simply packed my things, left a note on the kitchen counter, and walked out the door. I still remember the crisp morning air filling my lungs as I stepped into the street, my bag heavy with textbooks I would never open again. For the first time in years, my heart felt light. I found a small, cramped apartment with barely enough space to breathe, but it was mine. The peeling paint, the flickering fluorescent lights, the creaky floors, it all felt like freedom. I had cut the strings. I had escaped. Of course, my parents were furious when they realized. They called, left voicemails dripping with venom and threats. My father promised to drag me back home, to force me into the mold he had crafted for me. But I never responded. I changed my number, cut every digital tie, and disappeared from their world. As the years passed, the company grew. We expanded our product line, brought in a flood of new customers, and caught the eye of major investors. My stake in the company became my shield, my proof that I had made the right choice. I didn't just escape their control, I thrived. And as the company's influence grew, so did my hunger for a quiet, poetic kind of justice. I dreamed of the day they would see me not as their failed project, but as a force they couldn't control, a power they had helped forge with every slap, every shout, every crushing command. I had no idea just how soon that day would come. Years slipped by like pages in a book I had no intention of rereading. My company grew from a cramped backroom project into a recognized player in the health tech industry. We weren't just surviving, we were thriving, pushing boundaries, setting new standards, and transforming lives. My life felt unrecognizable from those dark days under my parents' oppressive rule. But the universe has a wicked sense of irony. I still remember the day my past came crashing back into my life. It started like any other morning. I was walking through the sleek, polished corridors of the hospital my company had just acquired. Our technology had revolutionized patient management, and the hospital board had eagerly signed over their struggling facility for a fresh start under my leadership. I was reviewing the day's schedule when a familiar voice crackled over the hospital's intercom system, announcing a new batch of maintenance staff reporting for duty. I barely paid attention at first, focused on my tablet as I made my way to my office. But then I heard it, my father's unmistakable gravelly voice echoing through the hallway. My feet froze. For a moment, the world narrowed to the rhythmic thudding of my heartbeat. I stepped back, hiding behind a corner as I watched my parents, dressed in the faded blue overalls of janitorial staff, shuffle through the main entrance. My father's shoulders, once broad and domineering, were hunched under the weight of years and regret. My mother, always so sharp-tongued and cold, clutched her mop bucket like it was the only thing holding her upright. They hadn't seen me yet, too focused on the head janitor giving them a rush tour. The irony hit me like a punch to the gut. They had beaten me down, broken my spirit, and tried to force me into a mold of their making. Now they were walking into my world entirely oblivious to the fact that their son was the one signing their paychecks. Part of me wanted to confront them right there, to strip away their remaining shreds of pride, to finally see the fear and regret in their eyes that they had so often etched into mine. But I resisted. I wanted my revenge to be slow to simmer like the rage they had stoked in me for years. Instead, I quietly observed them for days, noting their routines, their small defeated gestures as they pushed brooms down the same hallways I strode like a king. It was a strange, bitter satisfaction watching my parents, who once held absolute power over me, reduced to scrubbing floors and emptying trash bins. One afternoon, I saw my father struggling to polish a scuffed section of marble near the executive wing. I could tell his hands, once so quick to strike, now trembled with age and fatigue. I watched from a distance, hidden behind a glass partition, my heart a twisted knot of rage and satisfaction. He paused for a moment, leaning heavily on his mop, and glanced up at a portrait hanging nearby. It was a photo of our founding team, the one we had taken just after our first major investment. My face, young and full of fire, stared back at him from the frame. For a fleeting second, I thought he might recognize me, that the truth might crack through his stubborn denial. But he just squinted, sighed, and went back to scrubbing. The weight of the moment nearly broke me. I had spent years dreaming of this, of watching them struggle, of knowing they had fallen so far from their imagined thrones. But standing there, hidden in the shadows, I felt something else, an unexpected bitter sadness. I turned and walked away. My footsteps echoing off the polished floors, my mind a storm of conflicted thoughts. This was just the beginning. My revenge would come, but not as a sudden storm. It would unfold slowly like a carefully constructed symphony, each note a reminder of the pain they had caused. And when the final chord struck, I would make sure they understood the full weight of their choices. It took weeks before I finally decided to confront them. I had watched them shuffle through the hospital halls, heads down backs, bent, their voices reduced to little more than whispers in the presence of their supervisors. The sight of them, once towering figures of authority in my life, now reduced to invisible cogs in the machine I had built, stirred a strange, dark satisfaction in me. But I needed more. I needed them to truly see me, to feel the full weight of their choices. So I arranged it. I scheduled a meeting in one of the sleek glass-walled conference rooms on the top floor. The kind of room that echoes power and control with every polished surface and chrome accent. I had the hospital's maintenance team, including my parents, summoned to a special briefing about the upcoming renovation plans. They filed in one by one, looking small and out of place among the sharp suits and polished shoes of my executive team. My parents entered last, my mother's eyes nervously flitting around the room, my father's jaw set in a stubborn clench. They still hadn't seen me, too focused on avoiding the gazes of the young, sharp-eyed professionals who whispered to each other as the janitors took their places near the back of the room. I took my time, letting the tension build, watching them from behind the one-way glass as I prepared to step into the room. I adjusted my suit, straightened my tie, and pushed open the door. The room fell silent as I walked in, the low hum of whispered conversations cutting off abruptly as I took my place at the head of the conference table. I felt their eyes on me, the staff, the janitors, the board members, all waiting for me to speak. For a moment, I let my gaze linger on my parents, watching as the recognition slowly bled into their eyes. My mother's face went pale, her lips parting in a small, disbelieving gasp. My father's fists clenched at his sides, his shoulders drawing up like a cornered animal. I leaned forward. My fingers steepled, my voice calm, but edged with years of unspoken rage. "Thank you all for coming," I began, my eyes never leaving theirs. "As you all know, this hospital has undergone significant changes in recent months. We've invested heavily in both our technology and our people, striving to create a workplace that respects every individual's potential." My father's jaw tightened, his eyes narrowing, as if trying to convince himself that the man standing before him, the polished, confident executive, couldn't possibly be the same boy he had beaten into submission all those years ago. I continued, letting my words cut through the air like a scalpel. "Today, we're discussing the future. The future of this hospital, of our patients, and of every single person who works within these walls." My mother's eyes were already glistening with tears, her hands gripping the frayed edges of her cleaning rag like a lifeline. I paused, letting the silence stretch, feeling the weight of years press down on us all. Then, without breaking eye contact, I reached into my pocket and pulled out the small crumpled note I had left on our kitchen counter the day I moved out. I unfolded it slowly, deliberately, holding it up for them to see. This I said. My voice cold and clear as the note I left the day I walked away from your expectations, from your violence, from the small, stifling life you tried to force me into. My father's face twisted, his fists shaking at his sides, the veins on his neck standing out like thick ropes. My mother took a small, shaky step back as if the thin paper in my hand was a loaded weapon. I told you then, I continued, my voice gaining strength, that I would make something of myself, that I would build a life on my own terms. And I did. I leaned in, my eyes locking onto my father's, watching the rage and disbelief clash in his gaze. I own this hospital, I said, the words falling like stones in the heavy silence. I built this. Every inch of this place is a testament to my strength, my resolve, and my refusal to be broken by you. The room was silent, every eye fixed on the silent, shaking figures at the back of the room. I took a deep breath, letting the power of the moment sink into my bones. I will not fire you, I said, my voice cutting through the air like a blade. I will not drag you down as you tried to drag me, but I will let you feel the weight of your choices every single day. You will walk these halls, cleaning floors, scrubbing walls, erasing the footprints of people who respect me, people who chose to support me, not break me. With that, I stepped back, turning on my heel and walking out of the room, the heavy glass door swinging shut behind me with a soft final click. As I strode down the hallway, my footsteps echoing against the polished marble, I felt a strange, fierce clarity wash over me. For the first time in my life, I felt truly free, no longer a prisoner to their expectations, no longer a victim of their rage. This was my world now, and they were just ghosts wandering its halls, shadows in a life they had tried so desperately to control. Weeks passed, and I watched my parents settle into their new lives as janitors. Their once commanding voices reduced to murmurs of, "Excuse me," and "Yes, sir." They avoided me in the halls. Their eyes always averted, their backs slightly hunched, as if the weight of their own regrets had finally bent them into submission. The irony never stopped cutting deep. My father, the man who had once stood over me, fists clenched, jaw set, with the certainty of his own authority, now scurried past my office door, like a ghost, careful not to draw my attention. My mother, who had once looked at me with nothing but icy disappointment, now polished the very floors I strode across with my head held high. I thought the sight of them scrubbing my success into every inch of this place would bring me a sense of closure, a final satisfying note to the symphony of my rebellion. But as the weeks bled into months, I realized that revenge, as sweet as it can be, doesn't always fill the void left by years of betrayal. One afternoon, I found myself standing at the large floor-to-ceiling windows of my corner office, the city skyline stretching out before me, the glass reflecting the distant, burdened figures of my parents mopping the lobby below. They had aged rapidly in those few months, their movements slower, their frames thinner, as if the shame and exhaustion were eating them alive from the inside. I should have felt triumphant, but instead I felt hollow. The same numbness that had wrapped around my heart the night my father's hand first struck my cheek, the same coldness that had settled in my bones when my mother turned her back on my silent plea for help. It hit me then like a slow, inevitable wave that I didn't want to be defined by my parents' failures. I had become so much more than the broken, fearful child they had tried to mold into their image. I had carved my own path, built my own empire, and forged a name for myself in an industry they never even considered respectable. I had won, and yet the weight of that victory felt strangely bitter. The next morning, I called a meeting with the head of HR. I signed the papers that would quietly transfer my parents to less public-facing positions. Their wages subtly increased, their hours adjusted to be less grueling. I didn't need them to suffer anymore. I didn't need them to scrub my name into the floors of my empire to know I had won. As I watched my mother push a cart of cleaning supplies down the hall later that day, her head bowed. Her steps heavy, I felt a strange, unfamiliar pang in my chest. Maybe it was pity. Maybe it was a flicker of the love I had once felt for her, before the bruises and the broken promises. I never approached them. I never demanded their apologies or tried to explain the pain they had carved into my soul. I simply watched from the shadows as they lived out the rest of their small, shrinking lives in the hospital that bore my name. And as the years passed, I found a peace that had nothing to do with revenge and everything to do with letting go. I learned that true strength doesn't come from crushing your enemies, it comes from choosing not to become them. 300-word, dramatic conclusion. As I walked through the hospital corridors one last time, the polished floors reflecting my steady footsteps, I felt a profound sense of calm. I had built this place from the ashes of my childhood, from the fragments of a life shattered by expectations I had never wanted to meet. I had rewritten my story, forged my own destiny, and in doing so, I had freed myself from the chains my parents had tried to bind me with. Looking back, I realized that the true revenge was not in their suffering, but in my freedom. I had broken the cycle, escaped the darkness they had tried to trap me in, and risen to a place where their words could no longer reach me. As I pushed open the glass doors and stepped into the sunlight, I whispered a silent goodbye to the shadows that had once haunted me. I walked away, head held high, a free man at last. Story 2. My brother slept with my wife. My parents took his side and demanded I support their new family. But what I did next left them speechless. I, a 34-year-old male, need to share what's been happening, because honestly, I'm losing my mind here and could use some outside perspective. This whole mess started way back, so I guess I should explain the background first. I grew up in a pretty average suburban house outside Boston. My parents weren't terrible parents or anything, at least not at first. They both worked decent jobs. We went on regular family vacations. Did the whole cookout thing in summer. You know, normal family stuff. I was their only kid for 8 years, and things were actually pretty good. Then my brother Mason was born. Look, I know how this sounds. Trust me, I've spent enough time in therapy to know this isn't just typical older sibling jealousy. The day Mason came home, it was like someone flipped a switch and I became invisible in my own house. I don't mean that in some dramatic teenager way. I mean, my parents literally forgot about me half the time. For example, when I was in 6th grade, I spent 3 months building this crazy detailed solar system model for the science fair. I built everything from scratch, even programmed this little Arduino thing to make the planets move. The judges were so impressed they gave me this special award for the math work. My parents didn't show up because Mason had t-ball practice. Not even a game, just practice. The living room walls were covered with Mason's participation ribbons, while my science fair trophy sat unopened on the mantle for a week before disappearing into the basement. My mom still has Mason's macaroni art from kindergarten framed in the kitchen, but she couldn't tell you where my high school diploma is. My dad was even worse about it. This one time I had this huge robotics competition. My team had worked for months and I was team captain. Dad promised he'd come the morning of the competition. Mason decided he wanted to try baseball, not even a real game. He just wanted to throw a ball around in the backyard. Guess who didn't make it to my competition? The car thing really showed their true colors, though. When Mason turned 16, my parents bought him a brand new Honda Civic, the reason to boost his confidence. Meanwhile, when I turned 16, I had to get 3 part-time jobs just to save up for college because they were teaching me responsibility. I worked at the library in the morning, did math tutoring after school, and worked weekends at this computer repair shop. Mason totaled that Civic 3 months after getting it. They bought him another one. But the thing about Mason is that he was a nightmare kid, like the kind of kid other parents whispered about. He'd throw these massive tantrums if he didn't get his way. Even as a teenager, he'd break things, scream at our parents, skip school, and they just made excuses for him. He's sensitive. He's just expressing himself. He's going through a phase. Meanwhile, I had to be perfect. Any grade less than an A+. And my mom would make these little comments about how maybe you're spreading yourself too thin. If I ever showed any frustration or anger, I was being difficult and making Mason upset. The crazy thing is, for years I actually believed there was something wrong with me. Like maybe if I was just a better son, they'd notice me too. I spent so much time trying to get their attention, but nothing worked. I didn't realize how bad it was until I got to college and saw how other families treated each other. How my roommates' parents would call just to check in. How my friends' families would celebrate all their kids' achievements. But the best part about college, the distance. I barely went home except for major holidays, and even then I'd make excuses to leave early. Dad would make these guilt trip comments like, Mason really misses his big brother. But I noticed Mason never actually called or texted unless he needed money for some business idea. By junior year, I was killing it academically and had 3 papers published. The department had recommended me for this exchange program in South Korea. 6 months at Seoul National University working on this cutting-edge AI project. My parents didn't even notice I was leaving the country until I was already gone. They were too busy dealing with Mason's latest drama. He'd gotten kicked out of his 3rd community college for not attending classes, though. 6 months in Seoul changed everything. So many opportunities. So much innovation. Plus, nobody knew me as Mason's brother or the quiet one. I was just me. You know, when my exchange program ended, a startup offered me a full-time position for after graduation. The salary was crazy good and they'd handle my visa and everything. I said yes without even thinking twice. I graduated top of my class, landed offers from major companies, and still my parents skipped my graduation because Mason had a GameStop interview. But I think I stopped caring anymore. Moving to Seoul was the best decision I ever made. Within 3 years, I was leading projects and finally living life on my own terms. My parents barely noticed the few times they called. It was always about Mason's latest crisis. He'd gotten fired again. He'd borrowed money from the wrong people. He'd gotten some girl pregnant. Turns out he lied about that one. The girl had to get a restraining order against him when he wouldn't leave her alone. Then I met Rachel. Man, I still remember exactly how it happened. I was at this tiny coffee shop in Hongdae trying to explain in my broken Korean why my credit card wasn't working. She stepped in to translate. Save me from completely embarrassing myself. Turned out she was teaching English at an international school nearby. Rachel was different from anyone I'd ever met. She actually listened when I talked, asked questions about my work and understood the answers. When I told her about some new code I was working on, she'd get excited with me instead of zoning out. Plus, she had her own life, her own goals. She wasn't looking for someone to fix her problems. She was looking for a partner. We dated for 2 years before I proposed. The wedding was small but perfect. Just our friends and her family. My parents said they couldn't come because Mason needed them at home. He'd gotten into some trouble with credit card fraud or something. Honestly, I was relieved they weren't there. Life was good, you know, really good. I was successful at work, happily married, living in a cool city. Rachel and I traveled around Asia on weekends, tried weird foods, learned new things together. I thought I'd finally escaped all the family drama. Then my company announced they were opening a new office in Boston. They wanted me to head it up. Triple my salary, full relocation package, the works. Rachel was excited about moving to the States, said it would be an adventure. I wasn't really thrilled to go back home, but I thought enough time had passed that maybe things with my family would be different. When we landed in Boston, my mom texted asking if we'd arrive safely. I thought maybe she was finally showing some interest in my life. Nope. She just wanted to tell me Mason had moved back to Boston too. Apparently, his business ventures in California didn't work out. By business ventures, I mean he'd convinced some girls' wealthy parents to invest in his tech startup. The startup was just a badly designed website that never launched. The girls' parents threatened legal action when they found out he'd spent their money on fancy cars and expensive restaurants. Typical Mason. Rachel and I settled into a nice place in Cambridge, landed jobs, and everything was finally coming together. Then Mason started showing up everywhere. First, it was just random texts. Hey, big bro, heard you're back in town. Then emails about wanting to reconnect, saying he'd grown up and changed. He wrote this long message about how therapy had helped him understand his past mistakes. Said he wanted to be a real brother for once. I ignored him for 2 weeks. Then he found out where I worked. He showed up in the lobby one day telling the receptionist he had a lunch date with me. Luckily, security checked with me first, but then he waited outside the building for 3 hours. My team could see him from our office windows just standing there like some creepy statue. Rachel thought I was being too harsh. He's trying to make amends. She said everyone deserves a second chance. She didn't know about the restraining orders or the money stuff. I hadn't told her because honestly, I was embarrassed. Who wants to admit their brother is basically a professional scammer? But Mason was clever. He'd always been good at manipulating people. He started sending Rachel these long emotional messages about how much he regretted not being a better brother, how proud he was of my success, how he just wanted to be part of our lives. Rachel kept pushing me to give him a chance. He seemed sincere, she'd say. People can change. I wasn't buying it, but she was determined to play peacemaker. Then, without telling me, she invited him over for dinner. I walked in after work exhausted, only to find Mason sitting in my living room like he belonged there. The audacity. My stomach dropped, and for a second I thought I'd lost my mind that I invited him and forgotten. No, this was Rachel's doing. I pulled her aside in the kitchen, keeping my voice low but firm. You invited him here without asking me. She sighed, crossing her arms. I just thought if you actually talked, maybe you'd see he's trying. I brushed it off at that moment. I didn't want to start a conflict with Rachel in front of him. and a small part of me wondered what if he really had changed. Back in the living room, Mason put on a damn Oscar-worthy performance. He brought an expensive gift, probably bought with someone else's money, asked all the right questions about my work, pretended to care about our life in Korea. Hell, he even managed to fake some tears while apologizing for our childhood acting like the lost brother who just wanted redemption. After that dinner, he started coming around more often. Always when I was at work, just keeping Rachel company. He'd say she's still adjusting to Boston, and I know what it's like to feel lonely in a new city. Looking back, I should have seen what was happening. The signs were all there, but I was so focused on my new job setting up the office hiring staff that I missed them. Then, after 2 months or so, I had to go back to Seoul for a week. The company needed me to train my replacement and transfer some sensitive projects. Rachel insisted she'd be fine. Mason can help me finish unpacking, she said. He knows the city better than I do. I didn't want to seem controlling. Rachel was an adult capable of making her own decisions, and Mason was acting so normal. Still, something felt off. I asked our neighbors to keep an eye on the house, install some security cameras, made sure Rachel had all the emergency numbers. The week in console was intense. 14-hour days, endless meetings, barely time to sleep. Rachel's messages became shorter, less frequent. She blamed the time difference, said she was busy setting up her classroom for the new school year. Mason sent me updates, 2 pictures of them out at local restaurants, showing sis-in-law the best spots in town, photos at the museum, the park, shopping downtown. But they weren't alone. My parents were always with them, smiling like this was some wholesome family outing. Every message came with a long, over-the-top text about how grateful he was that I'd given him another chance, how he finally understood what family meant. With my parents there, it should have felt normal, but something about it still didn't sit right with me. When I finally came back from Seoul, we had a family dinner. We were all sitting around the dinner table. Me, Rachel, and my parents. It was one of those rare family dinners where things actually felt normal, and for once, Mason wasn't the center of attention. Then, Rachel put down her fork, took a deep breath, and said, "I'm pregnant." My heart nearly burst. We had been talking about starting a family, and now it was happening. My parents gasped in excitement. Mom already rambling about baby names, Dad clapping me on the back. But Mason, he didn't look surprised. He just sat there smiling this weird little smile before saying, "This family is getting bigger in all the best ways." Something about it made my stomach turn. I didn't know why at the time, but looking back, that was the moment everything started falling apart. After the pregnancy announcement, Mason's behavior took a turn for the bizarre. At first, I thought he was just overly excited, but then he started showing up uninvited. More, I mean constantly every other day. There he was, acting like he had some unspoken right to be involved. "Got to check on my favorite sister-in-law," he'd say, grinning like he belonged there. Then came the comments. Little things that felt off. "Our baby is going to be so strong already," he'd say way too casually. Crazy how connected I feel to this whole thing. The way he talked about it wasn't just enthusiasm, it was possessive. Like he saw himself as more than just an uncle. I thought he was just being his usual annoying self. But then, little things started adding up. Things I couldn't ignore. I mentioned it to Rachel how Mason seemed a little too involved. "It's weird, right?" I said, expecting her to agree. Instead, she sighed like I was exhausting her. "You're being paranoid. Mason's just happy for us. Happy for us. We're happy for you." She rolled her eyes, brushing past me into the kitchen. "God, you always think the worst of people. He's trying to be better, and you're looking for reasons to push him away." That should have been my warning, but I let it go. Thought maybe I was overthinking it. One night I got home late from work and noticed the front door was unlocked. I was sure I had locked it that morning, but I figured maybe Rachel had just forgotten, after taking out the trash or something. Still, it nagged at me, so I pulled up the security camera feed to check if anything was off. That's when I saw the error message, "Error with storage settings." The system wasn't recording anymore. The past week's footage gone. That stopped me cold. I knew those cameras were set up right, and more importantly, I had them automatically backing up to cloud storage, something I hadn't told anyone, not even Rachel. I started noticing other little things too, like how Rachel always put her phone face down now, or how she'd suddenly end calls when I walked into the room, or how Mason seemed to know exactly what was in her fridge without ever asking. One night I couldn't sleep, just lay there thinking about all these weird things happening. Rachel was sleeping next to me, looking so peaceful. The pregnancy was making her tired all the time now. That's when I remembered the cloud backup for the security cameras. I got up, Went to my home office and logged into the cloud storage account. There were hundreds of saved clips. I started with the week I was in Seoul. First clip. Mason coming over right after I left for the airport. Nothing weird there. Rachel had said he was helping her unpack. Second clip, Mason and Rachel sitting really close on the couch watching a movie. Still could be innocent. Third clip, Mason kissing Rachel in our kitchen. That's when I started shaking. The clips showed everything. Mason coming over every single day while I was gone. Them getting closer and closer. Rachel letting him in late at night. It felt like the air had been sucked out of the room, like I was watching my worst nightmare play out in real time. Every buried fear, every doubt I tried to push aside, they were all true. Mason wasn't just pushing boundaries. He had bulldozed right through them, straight into my home, my marriage, my life. And Rachel. She let him, welcomed him in like it was normal. The worst part wasn't just the betrayal itself. It was how casual they were about it. Like they'd done this before. They'd hang out in the kitchen, cook together, watch TV on our couch. Mason would bring groceries like he lived there. There was this one clip that really got me. They were in the kitchen and Mason was standing way too close to Rachel. She was laughing at something he said, and he just reached out and touched her face. The kind of touch that tells you everything you need to know. Rachel didn't pull away. She smiled at him like she used to smile at me. I watched a week's worth of footage in one night. Saw them getting closer and closer. Saw Mason basically moving in while I was gone. Saw Rachel acting totally different with him than she did with me. The cameras don't record inside the bedrooms. I'm not that paranoid, but the hallway camera caught enough. Mason going into our bedroom with Rachel coming out hours later. I saved all the footage to a secure drive, made copies, backed everything up. The raged guy in me knew I needed proof. The husband in me wanted to throw up. I kept telling myself maybe I was seeing things wrong. Maybe there was some explanation. But deep down, I knew my brother and my wife in my house in my bed while I was working my ass off in Seoul to give us a better life. The morning after watching all that footage, I called in sick to work. Couldn't sleep anyway. Just sat there in my home office staring at the wall until Rachel woke up. She came in all cheerful, talking about prenatal vitamins and doctor appointments, acting like everything was normal. Like she hadn't spent the last week letting my brother into our home. I didn't yell. Just opened my laptop and played one of the videos. The one where they're in the kitchen and Mason's got his hands all over her. Rachel's face went white. She started crying, saying she could explain that it wasn't what it looked like. Then she switched to the classic cheaters playbook. We didn't mean for this to happen. It just happened. Mason really gets me, like somehow that makes it okay. I let out a short, bitter laugh. Mason gets you. Mason, the guy who's never held down a job longer than 6 months. The guy who scams people for a living. That's who gets you. Her lip trembled, but she didn't deny it. I shook my head, my voice tight with anger. I gave you everything, Rachel. I built a life for us. I worked my ass off so we could have a future. So our kid could have a future. You never had to worry about rent, about food, about anything. I supported your career. I traveled halfway across the world with you. I trusted you, and you throw it all away for him. Her eyes welled up, but I wasn't done. I texted Mason to come over. No explanations, no warnings, just a simple, "We need to talk now." He showed up like he always did. That smug grin on his face, probably thinking Rachel hadn't told me yet that I was still in the dark, still playing the fool. That grin died the second he stepped inside and saw the laptop open, footage playing frame by frame, exposing every single one of his lies. His eyes flicked to the screen, then back to me. His entire body stiffened, but Mason, ever the manipulator, tried to spin it immediately. "Bro, you gotta understand. Since when?" I cut him off, my voice steady, sharp. "How long has this been going on?" Rachel was already crying. I ignored her. I wasn't done with Mason. He was scrambling, trying to figure out the angle that would save him. It just happened, man. We didn't plan this. It wasn't like that. Rachel finally found her voice weak and shaking. "Please, you have to understand. We didn't mean to hurt you." I let out a sharp laugh. "You let my brother into our home. You let him into our bed. You let him pretend to be me while I was gone. But, yeah, sure. Tell me how you didn't mean it." Mason's voice dropped, his expression twisting into something almost defensive. "Look, bro, you're always working, always focused on career." Rachel was lonely. She needed someone who could be there for her. And then he had the audacity to say, "Maybe if you'd been a better husband, this wouldn't have happened." I swear my entire body locked in place, fighting the urge to throw him through the nearest wall. Is that what you tell yourself to sleep at night? That this is somehow my fault? That you didn't have a choice but to act like a goddamn parasite? Rachel sobbed harder. "Please, we need to think about the baby." I turned my head so fast she flinched. "Whose baby is this?" Her face crumpled like she hadn't even considered. I'd ask. "It's yours," she choked out. "I swear you swear." I gave her a look so cold it could have frozen the entire room. "Like you swore I was the only one. Like you swore Mason was just family." She didn't answer because she couldn't. Mason. Desperate. "Now come on, man, we're all family. We can figure this out." That was it. That was the moment something inside me snapped. I took another step toward him, closing the distance until I was right in his face. "Let me make something very, very clear to you, Mason. You are not my family. You are not my brother. You are nothing to me." He opened his mouth, but I kept going. "You crossed a line you can't come back from. And if this baby isn't mine," I leaned in, "then you better run. You better pack up whatever scam you've got going and get the hell out of my city. Because if I ever see you again, if you so much as breathe near me or this house, I will make sure you regret it for the rest of your miserable life." Mason froze for the first time in his life. He looked genuinely afraid. Rachel whimpered, "Please, let's just..." I cut her off. "Both of you get out." Rachel. She did something I wasn't expecting. She reached for my hands, gripping them like I was her last lifeline. "Please, we can fix this." We were both lost. I yanked my hands away so fast she nearly fell forward. "I wasn't lost, Rachel. You were lost. And you let my brother guide you straight into hell." "It was a mistake," she whispered. "A horrible mistake." "Yeah. No kidding." She inhaled sharply, and then, like clockwork, she flipped the script. "Are you really going to punish our child for this?" Her voice broke at just the right moment, like she'd rehearsed it. "Are you seriously going to be one of those dads? The kind who lets their own bitterness ruin their family? Don't even try that on me. He needs one parent who isn't a liar and a cheat." They kept talking, but I didn't have the energy to argue anymore. I kept urging them to get out, and as soon as they were gone, I grabbed my phone and called my parents, thinking, finally, they'd see Mason for who he really was. I should have known better. My mom's first words. "Oh, honey, you must have done something to push Rachel away." I felt like I'd been sucker punched. Then she kept going because apparently that wasn't enough. "Mason needs a good woman in his life, and Rachel clearly makes him happy for a second." I genuinely thought I was hallucinating. Are you actually hearing yourself right now, sweetheart? You've always been so focused on work. Maybe this was a sign that Rachel needed more from you. I swear I almost dropped my phone. I thought I'd misheard. I thought maybe there was some shred of sanity left in this family. But no, they were really standing behind him. My dad was even worse. Started talking about how Mason's finally found his path and how I should be the bigger person and help them out financially until Mason gets established. Like I'm supposed to bankroll the people who betrayed me. They even started telling family members that I was emotionally abusive and controlling, because I had security cameras in my own house saying I drove Rachel away with my cold personality, that Mason was just being a supportive brother. And things got complicated. That's when I knew I was done. Done with Mason, done with my parents, done with all of it. I called a lawyer that afternoon, found a good one who specialized in cases with proof of infidelity. I told them I had everything documented, every visit, every lie, every betrayal, and I filed for divorce. But my parents weren't done trying to destroy what was left of my life. A week after I filed for divorce, they hit me with a lawsuit demanding financial support for both Mason and Rachel. Their argument that I had a familial obligation to support my brother and pregnant wife during this difficult transition period. They wanted me to pay Mason's rent, cover Rachel's living expenses, and even fund Mason's latest business venture. The audacity was breathtaking. What they didn't know was that I'd been planning my comeback meticulously while they were busy trying to paint me as the villain. I'd been working to build an airtight case not just against Rachel for the divorce, but against Mason for his years of fraud and manipulation, with the help of my lawyer. We contacted every single person Mason had scammed in the past 5 years, found his victims through social media, online forums, and court records. My lawyer helped them file a class action lawsuit against him, complete with documented evidence of his schemes. The civil suit hit him like a freight train just as he was trying to convince Rachel they had a future together. Then we dug deeper into their affair. Turned out Rachel hadn't just betrayed me. She'd been helping Mason access our joint accounts. My lawyer found transfers, suspicious purchases, cash withdrawals that coincided with Mason's visits. We froze all the accounts immediately and reported the suspicious activity to the bank's fraud department. While this was happening, my parents were still pushing their lawsuit demanding I pay $5,000 monthly for Mason's basic needs and another $3,000 for Rachel's expenses. They even had the nerve to request $50,000 for Mason's new startup, all before anyone knew if the baby was even mine. The court date for their financial demands came exactly when I wanted it to. As my parents sat there smugly confident in their righteousness, my lawyer unleashed our counterattack. We presented evidence of Mason's ongoing fraud schemes, showed how my parents had enabled and covered up his crimes for years. Revealed bank statements proving they'd helped him hide money from previous victims. The judge ordered an investigation into their potential role in Mason's fraudulent activities. Their faces went from smug to terrified in seconds as they realized they'd walked right into our trap. Rachel wasn't spared either. The evidence of her complicity in Mason's financial schemes destroyed her credibility. The school board launched an ethics investigation when they discovered she'd been helping Mason target wealthy parents with his investment scams. Her teaching career imploded overnight. Mason's house of cards collapsed spectacularly through investigation. Former victims came forward as current scams were exposed, and his reputation was destroyed. No one would trust him with a dollar, let alone invest in his schemes. He tried fleeing to Florida, but his accounts were frozen. His credit was ruined, and he had nowhere to turn. And every time my parents or Rachel's lawyer tried to paint me as controlling or abusive because of the security cameras, it just made them look worse. The evidence showed I'd installed them for home security while traveling, not surveillance. Their attempts to twist it backfired, making them appear desperate and dishonest. But I wasn't done. I needed to know whose baby this was. By the time we got to the paternity test hearing, Mason was facing multiple investigations. Rachel was unemployed and facing potential criminal charges for financial complicity, and my parents were drowning in legal fees from their failed lawsuit. Their perfect little world had crumbled, and I hadn't even had to get my hands dirty. Just let the law do its work. As I waited for the paternity test results, I realized I didn't even care anymore about their destruction. I was focused on the future, my future and possibly my child's future. If this baby turned out to be mine, I was ready to fight for full custody. And thanks to our careful documentation of everything, I was in the perfect position to win. Buckle up, because this story somehow got even crazier. Remember how I mentioned the paternity test was pending? Well, it came back. I am the father. When Sarah, my lawyer, called with the results, I had to sit down. It's like life has a sick sense of humor. You know, the one thing that could make this mess even more complicated actually happened. But here's where it gets interesting. The day after we got the results, Rachel showed up at my door demanding I drop all legal proceedings because family should stick together. The audacity of this woman. She brought Mason with her, and they tried to pitch me some BS about co-parenting as a modern family. Turns out they're completely broke after their accounts got frozen, and they were hoping to move into my house. Yeah, you read that right. The best part. They recorded the whole conversation thinking they could use it against me somehow. Except they forgot about one tiny detail. My security system records audio too. So now I have crystal clear footage of them attempting to extort me and admitting to several other schemes they've been running. Sarah says this is like Christmas came early for our case. Mason's schemes. Well, karma hit fast. He tried scamming some investors in Florida, except one of them turned out to be an undercover FBI agent. My parents had to sell their vacation home to bail him out. They're still insisting he's just misunderstood and that I should help him get back on his feet. Rachel's life is imploding spectacularly too. Remember that school board investigation? They found evidence she was using her position as a teacher to get parents' financial information for Mason's scams. She's now facing an investigation from the Department of Education, and several parents are filing civil suits. The cherry on top. My parents tried to organize a family intervention at their church, telling everyone I was mentally unstable and needed help. They invited Rachel's whole family and some church elders. What they didn't know was that Sarah had already spoken with the church leadership about Mason's elderly scam victims, many of whom were church members. The whole thing backfired beautifully, and now they're basically social pariahs in their own community. Story 3. My brother thought he could remove my wife. To make matters worse, my mother took his side. I had a plan though. They still can't talk about what happened that night. A little over a year has passed since my 30-year-old husband Emily and his 29-year-old wife were married. After meeting on a dating app, I must admit that I never thought we would truly connect, yet we clicked immediately. She was kind, funny, smart, and easy to talk to. There was no doubt in my mind that she was the one. We dated for 9 months before I proposed, and we were married 3 months later. Really, it was fast. Even if some people thought we were rushing, I have no regrets about it. Emily is the best thing that has ever happened to me. She is a high school art teacher, really intelligent and creative, but her life has been filled with a lot of experiences. Since her parents died in a car accident when she was 20, she has been living alone. Her strength and independence were what drew me to her. She is the type of person who is unfazed by life's challenges. She just keeps going, no matter how challenging it becomes. That was the first thing about her that I loved. I can also state that I haven't had an especially easy life. My family is complex, to put it politely. Janet. My 54-year-old mother reared me. When I was 11 years old, my father abandoned us, leaving my older sister Chloe, 32, and younger brother Liam, 28, alone. He did not die or do anything worthy. He just left one day, in fact. He said he had a business opportunity out of state. I packed a backpack and walked out of the home. After that, we never saw or spoke to him again. Mom did her best to look brave, but I think it shattered her. When she broke, she lent heavily on Liam. Liam was 8 years old, and his mother treated him like a fragile little prince who needed constant care. She used to say, "He's too young to understand why his father left. He needs more attention." That extra attention never stopped. Both Chloe and I were left alone. But Liam, yes, he was given everything. Mom would do whatever it took to get him what he desired. You name it. The greatest footwear, the newest gaming system, etc. Liam, I understand. By the time I was 15, I was working part-time to pay for basic school supplies. I used to make fun of it with Chloe, referring to Liam as the golden boy. In actuality, though, it wasn't amusing. It was annoying. Mom made Liam's upbringing even more spoiled and entitled. Through it all, she spoiled him. He said that community college wasn't his thing and left after just 1 semester. Mom did not even blink. She simply shrugged and gave him control of the household laundry. By manage, I mean that he was hardly present while Mom was in charge of the company. In the meanwhile, I put in a ton of effort to reach my current position. I worked part-time jobs and received scholarships to pay for my college education. I graduated with a degree in software development and was hired by a reputable computer business. Mom should be proud of me for that, wouldn't she? Not at all. According to her, I simply got fortunate with computers or whatever. However, since Liam was managing a business, she saw him as the true success. Yes, all right. I made an effort to keep a good relationship with my family in spite of everything. Although it wasn't simple, I ultimately reasoned that they were still my family. Emily recommended that we remain near them when we were married. Given that she had no family of her own, she believed it would be beneficial for us to have a network of support close by. It meant a lot to her, so even though I wasn't excited about the concept, I accepted it. We purchased a little home a short distance from Mom's house. I initially believed it might not be so horrible. Emily looked to be quite liked by Mom. She never stopped reminding me how fortunate I was to have such a kind, polite wife. Chloe was excellent too. She has always been the typical family member. Liam, however. Liam was another matter. Everything seemed to revolve around Liam. Liam would pretend it was his idea if Emily said something nice about the laundrette, like the cafe Mom had built up in the corner. Despite the fact that everyone knew Mom was the one who kept the house running smoothly. Naturally, Mom supported all of this. Liam just loves spending time with you, she would add. It's good to see that he and your wife get along. In any case, for a time, everything appeared to be okay. I was getting used to having my family so close, and Emily and I were getting used to married life. I thought I had it all under control. If I've learned anything, it's that things are never as simple as they seem when it comes to my family. Now that I think about it, I wish I had realized sooner. Initially, it seemed harmless. Since Emily was new to the family, I thought Liam was only attempting to establish a relationship with her by being exceptionally kind to her. He would bring over a tool he thought we might need for the home, or he would arrive at our house without warning with coffee or snacks saying he was merely by chance. Similar to a screwdriver or wrench, he even once purchased her a pricey piece of jewelry even if we didn't ask for help. I dismissed the fact that it was a bit extreme. He was, after all, my brother. Why should I be suspicious of anything strange? Emily also remained silent about it, not initially anyhow. Every time he handed anything, she would smile and thank him, but I could see she wasn't quite at ease. She is so kind, always worried about causing others distress. I thought she was just being kind. To be honest, I thought Liam was just socially awkward and trying too hard to be helpful. I even made a joke with her once, so Liam probably has to learn how to take a hint. The issue is that Liam wasn't just sometimes stopping by. He was doing it often, maybe a few times a week. At this rate, we may as well give him an additional key, I remember telling Emily once. Even if she was laughing, there was nothing I liked about the look in her eyes. Again, I thought I was overanalyzing the issue, so I brushed it aside. Then came Liam's birthday dinner. Mum made a huge production out of it as she normally does for him. She prepared many dishes she knew he liked, baked his favorite cake, and even decorated the house with balloons. It was just another instance of Liam being the center of the world for our family. Emily and I went since we had no choice. I also thought that for once it could be nice to have a normal family gathering. The dinner got off to a nice start. As we gathered around the table, everyone began discussing strange subjects, making jokes and making sure he was the center of attention. Liam was in his usual haughty mood. Liam was special, Mum explained, and all he needed was the right person to help him calm down at one point. She said, "Someone like you, sweetie," as she turned to Emily. "You'd be perfect for him." I became icy. Emily was very uneasy, but Liam grinned and went on, "Yeah, Emily, you and I would have been perfect together. Unfortunately, Eric got to you first." Everyone chuckled as though it were a lighthearted joke, but my stomach churned. I pretended to chuckle, playing it casual, but I was really angry. Who would address their brother's wife in such a way? I wanted to call him out right away, but I didn't want to ruin the moment. I figured I'd talk to him about it later. Emily didn't say anything on the way home. When I asked how she was feeling, she just nodded and said she was tired. I didn't press her, but I couldn't help but replay the conversation in my head. Liam's face when he told her that. It wasn't just a joke. I couldn't shake the feeling that something else was going on. Emily was reluctant to talk for a few days. She waited until we were seated on the couch alone after dinner. She said she didn't want to cause a conflict, but she felt I should be aware of what was going on. That's when she told me about Liam's actions against her. Clearly, it was more than just the occasional gift or the frequent visits. He was trying to find an excuse to go up to her. He stood too close to her, brushed against her arm, and even tried to hold her hand while expressing gratitude. His remarks, such as she had the most beautiful eyes, were excessively intimate, or that she was more deserving than someone who works hard. She had been trying to ignore it, she said, clearly referring to me. But after the birthday dinner, things started to seem overwhelming. She had forgotten how to handle it. When I asked Emily why she hadn't told me sooner, she told me she didn't want to upset the family. She was aware that her mother had always stood with Liam, so she didn't want to make things worse. She also said she didn't think I would believe it. Her query about whether I would hurt her back made that part unpleasant. Liam had never done more. I told her I didn't believe her at all, and I wouldn't stand for this. That night, I couldn't sleep. I again replayed what she had said to me, including all the small subtleties I had missed or ignored. Liam arrives there without being invited, tries to assist Emily, and finds an excuse to speak with her. It was all adding up now. Liam wasn't just being friendly or uncomfortable, this was a whole other issue. I started to pay closer attention the following day. I didn't talk to Liam right away because I wanted to see how he would respond when he didn't think I was watching. Not surprisingly, he came to our house that afternoon with a false excuse that he wanted to borrow a tool. He barely gave me a nod before heading to Emily and giving her a coffee. I figured you may need a little encouragement. Even though she seemed uncomfortable, she politely thanked him. I tightened my jaw, trying not to lose it there. I told Emily I would talk to him after he was gone. "Not just yet, at least," she responded. She said she didn't want to make things worse until we had a better strategy. I agreed, but it wasn't simple. Every time I saw Liam after that, I wanted to slap him across the face. I hated the way he acted, as like everything was okay, as if he didn't make my wife uncomfortable all the time. Now I saw that this was not how things could go on. Something had to give. But after seeing him do the same things for a week, I couldn't control myself. I decided to talk to him about it. When I invited him to my house, I acted as though I needed help with anything. When he got there, I wasted no time. I told him that I had heard the odd things he had been saying, that he had been standing too close to Emily, and that he had tried to talk her out of it. At first, he just gave me a look like he was surprised that I had actually called him out. Then he started laughing as though I had just told the greatest joke ever. I think of Emily as a sister. He shook his head and said, "Dude, you're being paranoid. I would never behave oddly. You're just jealous since I get along with her better than you do." That last bit hit a nerve, but I didn't back down. I told him stop it, that his behavior caused Emily to feel uneasy. And if he didn't resign, we were going to have a serious problem. I was exaggerating the matter, he said, shrugging and leaving without more comment. After that, I felt considerably worse. Liam didn't take me seriously at all. If nothing else, my rage must have amused him. When I told Emily about the encounter, she wasn't surprised by his reaction, but she was grateful that I stood up for her. She says that he won't change. Unfortunately, she was right. After that experience with Liam, I knew things had to change. I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. Furthermore, I must admit that I was enraged by the way he laughed it off. I had been restraining myself and trying to keep the peace, but now I was done. I knew we could no longer live so close to him and his mother. Emily deserved better than to be confined in her own home, so I couldn't keep putting her in situations where she had to put up with Liam's shit. That's when the idea of moving came to mind. The timing seemed almost eerie, occurring at the same time as all of this. I was given the chance to work in Kansas City. I hadn't been actively looking for employment, but an old college acquaintance who works at the business had mentioned my name to his boss. A week later, I got the call. They wanted someone with my skill set and were offering a decent pay raise. I wasn't sure whether I wanted to relocate anything after that birthday dinner and Liam's increasingly unsettling behavior, but it seemed like a sign. Emily and I spoke about it one night. I told her about the opportunity and that she would have to move out of state to accept it. She immediately appears relieved. "Does it mean we can simply leave like that?" she asked in a voice that was a combination of uncertainty and hope. I knew what she meant. Mum wasn't going to take the news well, and I didn't even want to consider Liam's reaction. But I told her that we had nothing left to pay them. We have to look out for ourselves. We organized the relocation over the next 2 weeks. I gave notice at my old job, told my boss I was accepting the offer, and started searching for a house in Kansas City. Throughout the entire experience, Emily was exceptional. She searched through job advertisements, made virtual tours, and even packed most of our possessions while I worked. Logistics. The only one we told was Chloe. She had always been the rock of the family, so I trusted her. Not to tell the truth, I told my mom that we were moving on. It was as if I had just warned her that the end of the world was imminent. "Are you relocating? What are you saying?" As she asked, her voice was full of disbelief. "What about the family? Are you going to desert us? What about Liam? He'll be heartbroken." At the last paragraph, I rolled my eyes so hard that I feared they may become stuck. "We have to look out for ourselves, Mama." I was combative in my speech. "Emily and I want this, and it's a great opportunity for my career." She wasn't too fond of it. "I had deserted the family," she said. I believe Emily was the one who encouraged me to leave. Mommy behavior is typical. She was always blaming someone else when things didn't go her way. I had no purpose in arguing with her. There was no intention. Once Mom made up her mind, it was difficult to persuade her to modify it. Luckily, Liam was still unaware of our plans. I wanted it to stay that way. As we left, it was a gloomy day. When Chloe came over to help us pack the moving truck, I knew I wouldn't be seeing her as often. Her words, "You're doing the right thing," came as she embraced me tightly. "You shouldn't have to feel guilty about it." Emily hugged her, thanking her for her constant support. When Chloe promised to keep our address confidential, I believed her. She'd seen enough of Liam's behavior to know we had to go. The journey to Kansas City was lengthy yet surprisingly peaceful. I discussed everything we wanted to do with Emily. After we've settled in, we could even get a dog, explore the city, and discover new hobbies. For the first time after weeks. Emily appeared really happy. She even joked that she would decorate the new house with all the art supplies she had been collecting. It seemed like a fresh start, and I was ready to put the family strife behind me. We arrived at the new house late at night. In contrast to the hectic atmosphere we had been living in, the small 2-bedroom house in a quiet neighborhood felt like a luxury. A few days were spent unpacking boxes, setting up furniture, and becoming acquainted with the area. The decorating was Emily's responsibility, and I have to say that she did an excellent job. By the end of the week, it really felt like home. Emily also started to relax. She even stopped jumping at the smallest sound and started to sleep better. One evening, we were relaxing on the couch while watching a movie. She said, "I feel safe here," as she put her head on my shoulder. I had no idea how deeply their remarks touched me. I didn't realize how much she had been repressing until then. Assuring her that we would always have this peace together, I wrapped my arm around her. However, the nagging feeling in the back of my mind continued even though I tried my hardest to focus on our new life. Liam. I hadn't told him we were moving, and I hadn't heard from him since we left. Part of me was relieved, and part of me wondered how long it would last. Mom hadn't called either, which was unusual. I figured she was still thinking about our betrayal. Emily and I made the decision not to let it affect us, even though we were determined to move, find employment, and begin a new life, away from the poisonous family connections that had been preventing us from moving forward. For now, at least, we appear to be in control, and that's more than enough for now. I'll notify you as soon as Liam finds out about our move or if anything else comes up. 1% is the hint. Hello to all of you. I felt it was time for an update because things have been really busy. I wish I could claim that things have been simple ever since we came to Kansas City, but that isn't the case. I'm having a hard time understanding how far this has come, and things have changed. For the most part, it seemed like a fresh start after a few weeks here. Maybe I thought we were finally over all the chaos. I was wrong, boy. A few days ago, Emily noticed someone outdoors for the first time. While she was unloading dishes in the kitchen, she observed Liam pacing in front of our house. At first, she thought it may have been someone who looked like him. He had no reason to know that we lived here. Then he rang the doorbell many times. "Emily!" He was yelling, clutching a bundle of roses. "Chatting is all I want to do." That was shocking to me when she told me. How in the world did he find us? We didn't tell him or our mother about our move. I completely trusted Chloe, and she was the only one who knew. However, he was standing outside our door like a spooky stalker. I told Emily to stay still and not open the door while I called the cops. By the time they arrived, Liam had left. It was irritating but not surprising because they said they couldn't do anything unless he came back or threatened them directly. Later that night, I called Chloe and asked how on earth Liam had found us. At first, she claimed vehemently that she hadn't informed anybody confused. However, she paused while we were still talking. Then she broke down in tears and told me the truth. Liam had stolen a copy of our house key from her while helping us pack. He must have found our address on a piece of mail or one of the moving boxes and decided to keep it to himself. Chloe was incredulously appalled. She apologized over and over again, saying she didn't know what he had done until now. I couldn't really blame her for not keeping a closer eye on him, but she felt horrible about it. This was entirely Liam's fault. He went too far, which is why I was angry with him, but Chloe didn't stop there. I was also sickened by a couple other things she mentioned. Liam's interest with Emily was deeper than I had previously thought, as shown by the fact that he had been secretly taking spooky photos of her during family gatherings. Chloe claimed to have seen pictures of Emily in our old house, either reading a book or relaxing on the couch without realizing Liam was taking pictures. Worse, he had been recording her voice as she talked, and assembling long audio recordings that he had listened to over and over. It was incredible what I was hearing. This was no longer just harmless flirting or boundary pushing. The behavior constituted blatant stalking. How could I have let things go this bad? I knew Liam had issues, but I didn't believe he was capable of doing that. I started replaying all the times I told myself that his behavior wasn't serious and brushed it off. But now that I knew what Chloe had told me, it was clear that Liam was dangerous. I could not afford to be reckless any longer. Emily was a bit taken aback but not surprised when I told her what Chloe had said. She reasoned that there had to be more to it. He looked at me and she recognized it. His remarks always sounded odd. She told me how much she appreciated me hearing her worries and standing up for her. However, it was evident to me that she was growing weary of the situation. She started to jump at the smallest noise and repeatedly checked the door locks before turning in for the night. It broke my heart to see her like way. The following day, we found more proof that Liam had been watching us. While tidying the mailbox, Emily found a message addressed to her written in Liam's handwriting. With phrases like, "I'll wait forever if I have to," and "You're the only one who understands me," it was rambling and incomprehensible. It was creepy as heck and confirmed what I already knew. Liam was determined to stay with us. The cops again said they had no authority when I showed them the letter, unless Liam showed up again or made a clear threat. We are looking into their recommendation to get a restraining order, but it's a process. In the meantime, we have installed security cameras around the home, and I have been recording all of our conversations, texts, and activities. I want to make sure we have as much evidence as possible in case things becomes worse. Mom isn't helping, of course, when I told her what Liam had done. Her initial reaction was self-defense. Uncomfortable. I'm just upset. Oh, she said, you ought to have told him before you left. He doesn't know how to handle it. She even had the gall to blame Emily, saying that if she hadn't been so kind to him, he wouldn't have misinterpreted. It was incredible what I was hearing. Excellent. Mom didn't want to cause an argument, so she used Emily's civility as an excuse for Liam's behavior. I told her that she needed to wake up and see that Liam wasn't acting overly sensitively. He had been stalking my wife. Mom hung up after that and hasn't called me since. Emily and I are trying to be strong, but it's challenging. She has erased all of her social media profiles and seldom goes out alone. I've started working from home more often because I don't want to leave her alone. Every time I leave the house, I can't help but look over my shoulder, half expecting to see Liam hidden nearby. It's exhausting, and no matter how far we go, it seems like we can't escape him. I have no idea what's going to happen next, but one thing is for sure. Liam is not just an overgrown boy who has a crush on someone. He is dangerous, and I'll do everything it takes to protect Emily from him. This is more than just family turmoil now. It's related to safety. I'll update everyone as things go. Our main priorities at the moment are survival and trying to figure out what to do next. Update 2% after that. Hi everyone, I've come back with another update. Liam has once again demonstrated to me that I was wrong to think that things may become worse. We have the impression that we are now in a terrible movie. There isn't an off button though. Sincerely, Emily can hardly function and I'm exhausted. I just need to get this out. Now let's begin. About a week after my last post, the first incident happened. Emily had started going back to her usual activities, acting as though nothing had happened. She didn't want to feel trapped in her own home, and I completely understood that. One morning, she went to her favorite store for art supplies. About 15 minutes away, she likes to visit this tiny mom-and-pop shop to browse and get ideas. She didn't initially see anything, but as she was leaving, she saw Liam's car parked across the street. At first, she thought she could be seeing hallucinations. Even though she convinced herself it may have been someone with a similar automobile, he followed her as she got into hers. He didn't try to hide it either. He kept a few car lengths behind her all the way home. She called me while driving and said, "I think he's following me," in a shaky voice. I told her to calm down. If you drove straight home, I'd meet her in the driveway. As she approached closer, Liam's car was nowhere to be seen. He may have turned off before she got to the house, but the damage was already done. Emily was shaking and crying so much that she could hardly get out of the car. After holding her for what felt like an age, I assisted her inside. She maintained that I shouldn't have gone out. I should have stayed at home. I tried to explain that this wasn't her fault and that Liam was to blame, but she wasn't paying attention. When we reported the incident to the police, they were again helpless in the absence of concrete proof that he was pursuing her. They suggested that we keep track of everything and let them know if it happens again. I asked if we might get a GPS tracker for Emily's car in case we needed proof that he was after her. The officer said it was a fine idea, so we bought one that same day. The next episode was much more horrifying. Emily had started going to a nearby park in the mornings to relax and breathe in some fresh air. She thought it was safe because it was always packed with runners, dog walkers, and families. One morning when she was sitting by the pond drawing in her notebook, she heard someone calling her name. She looked up to see Liam sitting on a bench close by, watching her as though he had been there all along. Emily became really anxious. As she collected her things and started to return to her car, Liam trailed after her. Without a word, he just kept walking a few steps behind her. When she reached her car, she locked the doors and drove away. Even though he didn't try to stop her, she said the look on his face was enough to haunt her for days. He seemed calm, she said, as if his presence were perfectly normal and he wasn't even behaving badly. When she told me when she came home, I was incensed. I couldn't believe that he had found her in the park. He appeared to be observing her at all times. I went straight to the police station and questioned them about their inability to do anything more. They admitted that I was annoyed, but they reiterated that additional evidence was needed to make a stronger case for harassment or stalking. I provided them the GPS tracker information from the first event and told them about the park. Although it was beneficial, they said we still needed more. Emily was now too scared to go out on her own. She canceled her plans to return to work and told her boss that she needed more time off. Her boss was quite kind and even offered to have someone at work monitor her mail and calls if she chose to come back. Emily was grateful, but I could see it didn't make her feel any better. She started having bad dreams, crying or having trouble breathing when she woke up in the middle of the night. It felt as though Liam was everywhere, even though he wasn't there. One evening, I noticed her sitting on the floor of the hallway, just staring at the front door. "I'm just making sure it's locked," she replied when I asked her what she was doing. Seeing her like this broke my heart. She was terrified to live in her own home, although before she was strong and independent. I promised to do all in my power to keep her safe. However, I must admit that I was also terrified. Not for me, but for her. I had lost faith in Liam's skills. We decided to make a few changes around the house to help Emily feel more secure. We added a doorbell camera that alerts us when someone approaches the front door, updated the locks on all the windows and doors, and installed motion sensor lights outside. Furthermore, I installed a system that would enable her to press a button on her phone to trigger an alarm if she sensed danger. Even while it wasn't perfect, it was better than nothing. Mom wasn't helping, of course. She got in touch with me a few days after the park event to let me know that I was overstating things. I was exaggerating the matter, she added, and Liam was only trying to make things right. I told her to stay out of it because she was enabling him and making things worse. "He's my son," she countered. "I can't just ignore him." I wanted to shout at her, but instead, I hung up. Her explanations were becoming excessive to me. Right now, we're just trying to get by day by day. Emily has started treatment to assist with her anxiety, and I'm doing everything I can to support her. It's exhausting, but I believe we'll get through this. Liam is incorrect in his belief that he can control us. We're not going to let him win. In case anything more happens, I'll give you another update. Thank you to everyone who has been seeing and leaving comments on this. You have no idea how important it is. After a 3% update followed by another update, I honestly don't know where to start. I can't seem to get out of this nightmare. I thought things were terrible before what happened recently, but now they're even worse. I'm trying to understand everything, so please be patient. It started like every other night. We ate dinner, watched a little TV, and went to bed at around 10 o'clock. We double-checked the locks and, as usual, made sure the alarm system was armed. For some reason, I was anxious as we prepared for bed. I even made a joke to Emily about how I kept staring at the front door, which may be causing me anxiety. She said, "Better paranoid than careless," and I smiled a bit. I don't know how long we had been asleep when it happened. I was completely cold when I woke up to Emily's yelling. I woke up in bed trying to make sense of what was going on. That's when I noticed him. Liam. One of the chairs was occupied by him. Most likely he dragged himself from the kitchen indoors, placed right next to Emily's bed. He was holding her hand and murmuring something I couldn't make out. And look of fear was on her face. For a while I thought I was dreaming. How in the world did he get in? The doors were locked and the windows shuttered. Everything was secure. However, he was present, as if none of that mattered. My body moved before my head could respond. I sprang from the bed and swung at him, knocking the chair over and sending him crashing to the floor. He tried to justify himself, but I wasn't being defensive this time. I pinned him down and shouted for Emily to call 911 while I held him there. He complained again and over again. "I ought to have her. She is not worthy of you." His voice was calm, almost robotic, as though he really believed what he was saying. It was one of the most eerie things I have ever experienced. I don't know how long it took for the police to arrive. It was only a few minutes, yet it seemed like a lifetime. When they finally got there, they lifted Liam off the ground, bound him, and started interrogating him. That's when we learned how he got in. He had spent weeks watching us, getting to know our routines and waiting. Before he entered, he managed to switch off the electricity so the alarms wouldn't go off. The police also found a duffel bag he had brought. Inside were duct tape, zip ties, and a container of chloroform. And this part is still making me feel horrible. An engagement ring. He had also grabbed a framed photo of Emily from our living room, like it was a trophy. She kept it in the bag. It was a really unnerving scenario when they were taking him out. "This isn't over," Liam said, looking directly into my eyes. It made me shudder, but I'm not sure if he really believed he would have another chance or if he did it only to scare me. Emily, meantime, was seated on the floor, shaking and crying. I've never seen her look so afraid. It crushed my heart. Inquiries, police reports, and attempts to comfort Emily filled the hours that followed. She kept questioning how it got to be this way. What was he doing? I had no answers, to be honest. I felt like I had failed her, like I should have done more to protect her. The police's guarantee that Liam would be held without bail due to the incident's circumstances didn't exactly reassure us. The fallout has been extensive. Since that night, Emily has struggled to get to sleep. She flinches at every little sound and keeps saying that she feels like he's still watching her, even though we know he's in jail. Her therapist has been working hard, but healing from this kind of trauma takes time. She has stated that she wants to relocate again since she can't handle the thought of staying here after what happened. She is not answerable to me. Every time I walk into the bedroom and see that chair on the floor, I remember how close we were to something far worse. My mother, who is obviously in total denial, has also been a burden for me. When I called her to tell her what had happened, she truly tried to keep Liam safe. She claimed not to be a bad person. He is confused and only wants help. Confused. The guy broke into my house in the middle of the night using duct tape and chloroform. I told her to wake up and see that Liam was more than just her baby. He posed a danger. She lost her temper and accused me of trying to ruin his life. I then hung up the phone. I'm too tired to waste any more time on her excuses. We are accusing, of course. The police seem to be taking this seriously based on all the evidence they found in Liam's backpack. I still find it horrifying to consider him being out there at some time, even though they have assured us that he will serve a long jail sentence. I've also hired a lawyer that specializes in cases like this one to make sure everything is done right. Not only to us, but especially to Emily. I want to make sure Liam is held responsible for his actions. She didn't deserve any of this. Emily is currently sleeping in the guest room as she is unable to make herself go back to the bedroom. I have been sleeping on the nearby couch to make her feel less alone. We're thinking of moving. Even if the thought of packing up everything and starting again is exhausting, but if it makes Emily feel safer, I'll do it without hesitation. I'm still in awe that this is my life. A year ago, I was just a man looking to begin a new life with his wife. Police reports, restraining orders, and a brother who has turned into a full-fledged stalker are all things I now have to deal with. It's not real. And not in a good way either, but for the moment I'll leave it here. We are grateful for everyone's attention and support. It has been a lifeline through all of this. I'll provide you another update as soon as we get more details on the charges and the next steps. Our primary concerns at the moment are staying safe and making ends meet, for an upgrade of 4%. Hi everyone! This will probably be my last update. We truly want to finish this chapter and move on with our lives because so much has happened. I sincerely appreciate all of your help and advice. The significance of it is beyond words. Liam's case went to court a few months after the break-in. He was charged with stalking, breaking and entering, and attempted kidnapping. The evidence was strong, especially in the case of the duffel bag. His recordings of Emily and the haunting journal entries they found in his house. He pleaded guilty, and the court sentenced him to 4 years in prison. At least he is no longer in our lives, but I wish it had lasted longer. Mum wasn't an exception. During the investigation, it was discovered that she had been providing Liam with information on Emily's daily activities and exerting pressure on him to impress her. She even knew what he was planning. It was also disclosed that Liam had previously followed women to Emily. Mum had paid them off to say nothing, thinking that marriage would benefit him. The court's viewpoint was different. She was charged as an accessory and sentenced to 3 years of probation. To be honest, the loveliest part is that she isn't allowed to talk to us. For our part, we decided to stay in Kansas City but moved to a new house across town. I didn't blame Emily for not wanting to stay at the old house after everything that had happened. She is still affected by the trauma. She said that she colored and trimmed her hair short because she didn't want to seem like the person Liam had been obsessed with. She also started wearing looser clothing. It still hurts me to see her believe that she needs to change who she is to feel safe. Therapy is helping her regain her confidence little by bit. We've cut off all contact with Mum, Liam, and most of the family. Chloe is the only person we still talk to. She has been there for me no matter what, even going so far as to testify against Mum and Liam in court. The rest of the family still thinks we're making things up, saying that family is family and that Liam needs help, not punishment. Indeed, no thank you. Life is becoming better if not perfect. We are focused on starting anew now that Emily has returned to her part-time employment. I've learned a lot from all of this. First and foremost, blood does not mean that you owe someone your security or peace. It's not always a good idea to remain with your birth family. Emily and I are currently starting a family of our own, one founded on love and respect instead of poison and excuses.